Hello, English 2225. Welcome to Cooking Under Quarantine. Mushroom risotto. Here, we have everything you need to make it. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is deal with our mushrooms. Make sure you give your mushrooms a good wash. There's a misconception out there that you shouldn't wash mushrooms, that they'll absorb water. That's not true. Cut off the stem. We're just going to chop them really finely. And they're going to go in the stock. Next thing, you want to get your pot on the stove. A liberal amount of grapeseed oil. And while your pot's heating up, we're going to crush some garlic. Get your mushrooms away from yourself into the pot. And as soon as they're in there, you're going to want to stir them up a bit so they all get touched by the oil. Give them a little toss and get them back in the heat. And we're just going to roast them really hard in the pan right here. And it's important to know not to season them right now. If you put any salt on the mushrooms, the water will leach out of it and it'll start to steam, and you get steamed mushrooms instead of roasted. So that's heating up nicely. We're going to take our garlic that we crushed, throw it in there with the mushrooms. I like my mushrooms to roast tap down, start to brown visibly. We're just going to chuck them in a 350-degree oven. And we forget about them. While the mushrooms are cooking, we're going to deal with our onion. For this, you're going to need a really sharp knife and half an onion. Root away from you. And we're just going to make really tiny, incredibly thin little cuts. Take your onion, curl your fingers in. And when you get to the root, save that and put it with your mushrooms because you can throw in the stock for later. A little bit of extra flavor. Once we've got our onions done like this, we just give them a once through with our knife. Now the mushrooms are almost done. We're going to deglaze them with a little bit of white wine. And I'm going to deglaze myself with a little bit of white wine. So, make sure if you're cooking with wine, you want it to be nice and dry. You don't want a sweet wine because that's going to affect the flavor a lot of what you're cooking. First, what we're going to do, look at these beautiful mushrooms, nice and golden. Just going to scoop them to the side and drain off some of that excess oil. We don't really need it. We're going to throw it on high heat. Give it a nice little season with some salt. Nice fresh ground pepper. Back on the heat, we're just going to give them a splash of wine. Make sure that comes up to a boil, and we're just going to reduce that all the way. You can see now what we're starting to talk about here. Almost all the wine is gone. Yeah, right there. See? Nothing left in the pan. Nice and dry. Those are ready to go. That garlic out there with you. And now, in the exact same pan, we're going to take the mushroom stems from before and that little bit of onion. Just going to throw them in. We're going to take our stock, right in there. So, now our stock's been boiling, simmering for about half an hour, 20 minutes. I'm just going to strain all that goodness out of there because now the goodness is in the stock. Now we can throw our pan on the heat and we're just about ready to make some risotto. Okay, so we're going to start with a little dash of oil. And add our onions. Now, you don't want a hard sizzle when you do this, just nice and light. You don't want to brown the onions at all. Then we're going to grab our rice. So we're using arborio rice, which is an Italian grain, classically used for risotto. It's named after the town Arborio in the Po Valley in Italy. As you can see, it's a very short grain rice, very high in starch. and it's very sticky when cooked. Makes it perfect for creamy risotto. After our onions are looking a little translucent, we're just going to add all our rice right in. Mix that up and we're going to toast our rice. A very important step in risotto because it's a dish about the rice. You really want to taste the rice, and toasting it brings out the flavor. We're going to deglaze with my wine. So with risotto, you don't add the liquid all at once. You give it about a third of the stock mixture. Because risotto is supposed to be creamy because of how we cook it. You shouldn't be adding cream to it at the end to make it creamy. It should be creamy just because of the starch leaching out of each and every grain of rice. Nice and sticky again. We're going to add another third of our stock. Okay, so you can see we've added most of our stock now. However, you can still see the whites of most of the grains in there. But it is getting quite creamy. You can see it. Now for this, we are going to finish. Back on the heat. Last little bit of the stock. So our single portion of risotto is just about done. There we go, that right there, that's perfect. So now, we can take our mushrooms that we did earlier on, throw a few of those in there. And take just a single, maybe a teaspoon of butter, throw it into the middle of the pan. You can take some of your mushrooms, use them as garnish, throw some of those beautiful roasted mushrooms on top of there. Take some that nice grated parm. And maybe another mushroom or two. And finally, a little bit of lemon zest. And just a quick squeeze of lemon. And there you have it. Mushroom risotto. My favorite thing to make. And one of my favorite things to eat. That tastes like Canadian literature.